Mychal. I am a sommelier, tarot card reader, and former ballerina.
I'm Suzanne. I am a writer, an author, and a teacher. Welcome to All the Woo.
This is W for Right Magic. As always, we'd like to remind you that we like to provide a safe, non-judgmental space for you to listen to our experiences and our own knowledge on these subjects.
And our crazy theories.
That's true. That's also true. But ultimately, if you're just woo curious or super deep in the woo, hopefully this is just at the very least entertaining. So we're doing something a little different this episode. Instead of me pairing something, Suzanne has a pairing for this W.
Because what could be more perfect for an episode on right magic than the whiskey writer's tears?
That's true. That's a lot of W's.
It is. We're working on, so the writer's tears is an Irish whiskey, and part of the charm of it is, the joke is that Irish writers drank so much whiskey that when they cried whiskey tears.
I can see that.
But the actual bottle is from Walsh Whiskey, which is a family business that was started in 1999. And they are dedicated to the revival of Irish whiskey as one of the world's most appreciated spirits. So here we are with neither of us being really whiskey drinkers.
This is true.
About to drink some writer's tears. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, if they if these were tears, then they definitely drink a lot of whiskey. I'm not traditionally a whiskey drinker by nature. When I studied whiskey, it was mostly by smell, by reading it and by smelling it. That was kind of what, just because the alcohol content is so high, normally I can't taste any nuance through it. That's typically why I don't.
Yeah, I am not much of a spirits drinker, but I can tell you that almost every single writer I know who has a bar has writer's tears. And
is it like a necessity? So like if I
I'm
write
guessing
something, I have to now own a bottle?
Although I will
Write a passage.
say my bottle was very close to empty, and I'm thinking that was the non-writer in my family who has been drinking it, because it certainly hasn't been me.
That's true.
Nothing
I did give
against
you
the
a
whiskey.
flask.
I'm just not a whiskey person.
I gave you a writer's tears flask.
It's a very cool flask.
It
Thank
is.
you.
I like it. You're welcome. Okay, Suzanne. So you're the writer, and I'm going to say
So far.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair. But right magic. What? Why is this woo? Okay.
So, and if you are a former student of mine and you have heard this spiel before and you're like, oh my gosh, again, just
you can
roll
fast
your eyes.
forward.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So think about this. Someone 4,000 years ago wrote something in their diary, and you are able to read it now and understand the emotions and the situation they were in. And the only way you can do that through time, culture, possibly gender, certainly all kinds of conditioning, is by marks they made on a page that were then translated into other marks, translated into other marks, translated into other marks. And that person's soul speaks to your soul. If that's not frickin' woo, I don't know what is.
Okay. All right. You got me. Tell me more.
So thinking about this episode, there were three sort of distinct branches of right magic that we came up with. One of them is what I just said, that writing is straight up magic.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the concept of traditionally magic is conveyed through writing.
Yes.
And then we have, because both of us are still cursive writers, makes us exotic in this world.
Apparently.
The magic that happens in your brain through writing, actual physically writing.
Yes.
So with those three things, I've talked about we are passing emotions and points of view, and ideologies and all of those kinds of things through time, through writing, what are some ways that you see writing being magic?
Well, I've also heard that spellings are spells, right? That's a major thing. And if you think about, there's a psychological phrase that is thrown about, and I actually can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but essentially what it has to do with is what happens outside, or it's like reversed reverse.
What happens outside is a mirror to what's happening inside.
Yes,
I'm
but
pretty sure it's a Jung quote.
I think so, yes. And so you can do this kind of like, if you are depressed, one of the things that they'll have you do as an option is to intentionally go around and make yourself laugh or smile, so that what you're doing on the outside then starts to translate and make changes on the inside of you for your mind. So same thing is true for feng shui, that you clean up your environment to help clean up your mind, right? Your exterior is a reflection of your interior.
That's the absolute basis of decluttering.
Correct, right? And we can see this in a lot of different ways. So writing is another form of that, where it's like you're putting something down, you're making it a very physical thing. I also was saying that when I was studying with the School of Metaphysics, sorry, this comes up in so many things, but it is a thing.
And it is also a metaphysical podcast.
It is. So by nature, it's going to come up. But I thought it was always really a good point that they made, that so whenever you would receive a new lesson that was written down, part of your homework is that you would have to go and read it every day and read it out loud. And the reason for reading it out loud was because it was utilizing a part of your brain and able to set into your brain so that you understood it in a different way that is different than just reading something quietly.
Right.
And I think that writing is exactly the same way. So when I'm studying for myself, the way that my memory works is that I will have to physically write it down. I cannot type it. Typing does not have the same effect. So physically writing something down for me really puts it into my memory in a way that my brain can access it, almost like I have a photo. I really can't. I'm having a hard time with words today, which is really not good for this.
And it's a Mercury day. That's the hilarious thing.
And that we're talking about writing. So words, writing, all the thing.
Photographic memory.
There we go. Where it's like
eidetic memory.
Exactly. Like I can come back and I can retrieve the information of me actively writing it down, and I can kind of read it to myself that way. I don't even need to go back and read it again, because it was just the fact that I wrote it down is what causes me to remember.
Inscribes it on your brain.
Right. And sorry to go for one more thing, but a lot of any kind of magical things that you do, it's recommended that you write it down, and either you burn it or it is really putting something that's in the ethers down into the physical. It's making it kind of transition dimensions in a way, right? So you can really think of it that way too, as making something real by writing it down.
Actually, what you are talking about is specifically in a book by an author named Leonard Shlain called The Alphabet versus the Goddess, which is one of the most fascinating reads I've ever read. He was a brain scientist, and what he discovered is that there is a completely different mechanism in writing by hand versus typing.
Yeah. I can tell you that firsthand.
But that it also, his thesis is that handwriting, as we are describing, moved from being a polytheistic society where you were looking at like hieroglyphs, where you are seeing all of the images at the same time. And so you have a very wide and balanced kind of view of how you were perceiving the information versus any of the monotheistic religions where words follow in order, letters follow in order. There is a right, there is a wrong. That, in fact, by using, and he calls it the killing hand, your right hand and your left brain being the tools that led to basically the civilization that we have now, but also the decline of goddess sorts of cultures and that sort of reading things that were more ideograms.
Mm-hmm.
So any of the languages that were not alphabets per se.
Right.
It is a brilliant book, but it talks a lot about the mechanisms in your brain of how that works.
There's also on another, and this is not necessarily writing, this is having to do with words in general, that, well, word starts with W, so I guess that works out.
And you need words in order to have writing.
This is true.
Abracadabra, baby.
But I was telling Suzanne, I think a couple of weeks ago, all the different things that I say in the morning as I get ready. And it's literally like me talking to the cells of my body. And even though I'm not writing it down, I'm literally saying out loud every day as directive to, right? Like literally there's a difference between thinking something and saying something.
Well, the actual vibration is working in your body.
Right, exactly. And so I think that there's a real power not only in saying things out loud, but also writing things down. It makes things real in a way, either of those actions, and especially if you put those things together, which is why in so many spell books that's kind of what holds the power. First of all, that there is all of these words that are put together being held that are meant and directed in a particular way. And then also the fact that in all of these, it's not just that it's written down, it's that then you say those things that have been written down. There's it's part of the alchemy.
And I'm going to say the element that's missing that you're not talking about is time.
Yes.
Because in that split second that you are doing that, you are anchoring that behavior, that frequency, that location, that intention in time.
Right.
And that's how you make a spell, y'all.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that is a major portion of any time you do something like that.
But in a lot of ways, that's also a prayer.
It's exactly what prayer is that. And there is a difference between, same thing, kind of thinking versus saying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had another thought that I just lost. Again, my brain is not working today for some reason. I apologize to everybody out there.
It's all those writer's tears.
It is. So many writer's tears.
So while you're catching up on that, I'm going to say another thing that we were thinking about in terms of write magic is the cursive aspect, which is, I think, what we're getting around to, which is the writing by hand.
Yes.
And how when you write by hand, you are inscribing it in your consciousness. When you read that out loud, you are inscribing it in your cells and in time. And so that combination of factors turns into write magic.
Absolutely.
And the other aspect of this, and I think this is probably going to become a booklet while we are on hiatus because, W is pretty close to the end of the alphabet.
This is true.
is going to be, I think I have ascertained a way to read a person's natal chart and identify the kind of writing that they are built to do. And Mychal shared her natal chart with me, and none of y'all are going to be surprised at this. You're going to be like, I don't need to read a natal chart to know that. I could have told you.
That's true. Also true.
That her thing to write, that she probably would have the most satisfaction in, is writing from her 12th house, from her subconscious. So all of the woo-woo stuff that we've been talking about, because this has all been a giant segue to getting Mychal to write a book.
Not for me exactly, but this is a long game for Suzanne, I guess, to get me to write.
Wow. I'm just lining up with your mother and all the other people in your life who have said, you should write a book.
You should write a book. Yeah, I've been told that so many times.
But the other aspect is being able to look at someone's birth chart and figure out the mechanism of how they could successfully do this. And through studying my own chart and through 20-something years of teaching adults how to write, I think I have figured out kind of how to surf with your own writer's energies. So that will be a further explanation or further exploration for me in terms of right magic.
Yes, to be able to look at somebody's birth chart and tell you what you should write, what motivates you to write. Yeah.
And how to tap into those energies if that's something that you want to do, you just haven't figured out how.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you remember what you forgot? Thinking that's a big no.
I think it is a no. I think that it's a no. But ultimately, yeah, as we've just been talking, I've just kind of been exploring in my own mind all the different ways that words and how it all kind of comes together where you're writing versus saying, all of that. Like it is speaking to the universe in so many ways. It's speaking to yourselves in so many ways. Oh, this is what I was going to say. This is why it's important for you to be very mindful about how you use your words. And that's
you might be throwing spells that you don't realize.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is a really, really important thing. Speaking negatively about yourself,
You're telling yourselves what to do.
Yeah, it's self-deprecating. Any kind of behavior like that is not beneficial. Let's see, especially if you're just joking. Even if you're just joking, be really careful about what you're saying, even if it's not meant to be serious.
The words are still out there.
They're out there, so just be careful on how you choose your words, and which is also being careful of, being mindful of how you use your mind. Always have, and this is why it's so important to do things like, not to get you to do all these things, but to do meditation and to be aware of your thoughts, because typically those things are the things that you say. Those things are the things that you write down. And that's what you're making real when you're putting it out into the physical world. So speak kindly about yourself and about others.
But I think that goes back to the undercurrent of all woo, which is live with intention.
Absolutely.
Other ways that writing can be magic is I have come to believe is that whatever you're writing, you are not only writing it. So whether that is a story or a screenplay or a song or a jingle or anything, but it is writing you. So it is a relationship that you have with your project. And once I stopped being kind of a commandant to my creativity and realized that this was, sort of the child inside me, and began interacting that way, became a much more fruitful and joyful relationship. So ways that writing can be used kind of in that context. I had a friend who was working on a book, and she went to a very fancy workshop. And this was maybe one of the first times I heard the term woo-woo. Okay. When she was relating this story. It was a deeply pedigreed writing instructor, and he gave them an assignment, or she gave them an assignment. I don't know. A person gave an assignment. And
the instructor gave an assignment. Okay.
And the assignment was, on a part where you were having difficulty, interview the character who was in that story. Mm-hmm. And I have given this assignment so many times in my classroom. And what the directions were you are going to have dinner with this character. And so you need to create the situation in which they are going to feel comfortable. And so she had a pesky hero who was just not behaving, in her estimation. And so she got a bottle of wine, and she put out some hors d'oeuvres, and she got some flowers. And the direction was, have your glass of wine or two, and then just start asking kind of the questions that you would if you were trying to get to know somebody, because that is what this process is. Because oftentimes people will sit down in their stories and not take into consideration that they are actually working with a living document of their story, with actual characters who are maybe some aspect of themselves or the superconscious or whatever, but that have drives and desires and maybe different agendas. And so my friend sat down, and she saw him come in, her pesky hero, and sit down. And she was kind of, they chit-chatted for a little bit. And then she was like, why won't you do what I want you to do? And so she said he was very genteel. He handed her a rose and told her she looked beautiful, and then proceeded to kind of yell at her for 30 minutes that he was the one who was worthy of being the overall hero in the story, not just the romantic hero, because of all of these different reasons. And she said that because the other part of the assignment is when the character starts speaking, you are just taking notes. You're just writing everything they say. You aren't looking at your page. You are just going as fast. Now, for anybody who might be aware of what automatic writing is, this is in fact a backdoor into automatic writing.
Which I can't really do. I have a hard time with automatic writing. People are like, well, do you do automatic writing? Like, I'm like, nah, my Virgo mind is way too wanting to be specific and have it be directed that I can't just which is why if I'm going to write a book, it's probably going to be about my own experiences.
Oh, for sure. Yes, yes. That's already in your chart.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is another way that you can work with the magic that is writing, is whatever project that you are working on, whatever thing that you think you might want to create, sit down and get to know it. The more that we interact with our creativity, it's just like a muscle. It's just like a child. The more of a relationship we have, and the more satisfying and joyful it becomes. And that is the real magic.
What I have found, not only speaking with you, but other people that I've either spoke to personally or else have heard from other writers, people who are writers, especially people who are not doing factual...
We're fiction writers, darling.
Right. Yes, exactly. So, but the point being is that all of them kind of describe that similar to sculptors talk about taking a block of rock, right, of stone, and saying that
You're thinking of the Michelangelo quote where he's freeing the angel.
Yes, exactly. Like it was always in there. He just set it free. He's just defining it out and taking it out of the stone. And it seems very similar of what writers are kind of talking about, like the characters that they're writing about. It's not so much their creation as it is something that in a way almost already exists.
And that is the beauty of archetypes, and that is what Jung was talking about, is that there is this soup or field or pool, or pick your analogy, and that all stories come from that same source, which is why the hero's journey, which is semi-maligned now because it has become so prevalent and so dissected and identified, but that is in all stories.
Yeah.
Because it is in that soup.
Yeah. So join us next time on All the Woo when it is X for...
extraterrestrials. Michael's so excited.
I'm pretty excited. You guys can hear all of my strangeness.
Thanks for joining us on All the Woo.